All right. Good morning, everybody. Glad to see y'all this morning. So hopefully today will not be nearly as heavy a day as Friday and Monday were. I don't have as much on the syllabus as I've had the last few days. They've been really heavy. As far as what you all need to do, so your homework for chapter 6 and 7 was due last night, and quiz 3 opens today at noon, due tomorrow at midnight. So that's all out there for you. And so we're ready to go ahead and get started this morning. Oh, and I forgot to send out yesterday's video. So as soon as we're done today, I'll get yesterday's video sent out. So sorry about that. I just got distracted. Hopefully we'll get done with the class today before we're supposed to have some storms here in Waco. So hopefully we'll get done before that. Usually our internet is just fine. It's our TV that gets affected by storms because we have sucky DirecTV. I don't like it. But anyway, so today we're going to go to the other end of our spectrum. We looked at perfect competition at this end of the spectrum. Now we're going to go to the complete opposite end, to monopoly. And so new market structure here. Aaron, everybody likes monopoly. One of my favorites. All right, so a monopoly is a sole supplier of a product that has no close substitutes. So we are talking about products that are different from everything else on the market, and only one firm is able to make that product. And the difference between, so that's one huge difference, is the number of firms and the fact that there are no substitutes or no good substitutes. And the barriers to entry in monopoly are super, super high. So that is another big departure from perfect competition. And so we're going to actually talk about what some of those barriers to entry are, since we've got several. These are just a few. There's tons more barriers to entry that we could talk about. All right, so the first that we'll talk about are legal restrictions. And these are things like patents and licenses. So a patent is basically a reward for a company that has spent time and money doing research and development to develop a new good or a new process or a new service. And so the government rewards this expensive research and development by allowing that firm a patent, which gives them the rights to produce the good exclusively for up to 20 years. Okay. So nobody else is allowed in those 20 years to produce the good. So as I said, most of it is for 20 years. For drugs, legal drugs, they're given 14 years. They're not given quite as long, even though it is super expensive to develop new drugs with all the testing that must be done. But I think that they're given a smaller window because a lot of times these drugs, are life-saving or are they want to give it more access to people earlier. All right, licenses are given by the government to give people the exclusive right to provide a service or a product. So licenses include the radio and TV frequencies. that broadcasts are done on. Those are given by licenses by the government. And so only that radio station or that TV station has the right to broadcast over that frequency. In New York City, if you want to start a taxi service, you cannot. You must buy a taxi medallion, which is the license to drive a taxi. And I haven't looked at the numbers for a long time, but way back when it was $1 million for a taxi license. So just the right to drive a taxi cost $1 million. Wow. And if any of you have ever been to a national park, generally the government gives out franchises in national parks for the park services, such as the concessions and the cleaning services and that kind of thing. And so that's another form of legal restriction, a government franchise. All right. Another thing we see in monopoly is what we call natural monopolies. And I'm going to switch over to the document camera just for a second. There we go. All right, so a natural monopoly a big old exaggerated graph coming. What these look like is we have a long run average cost curve where it takes a really long time, a large amount of output to get to the bottom of this cost curve. This is our minimum scale, if y'all recall. So that's the first level of output where we get to the bottom. And so this area of economies of scale really, really large, and it takes a lot of output. So to build a plant this large is prohibitively expensive, for one. And two, well, if we let this monopoly provide our output, this is our cost per unit for our monopoly. Okay. If the government were to force this to break into two separate firms, okay, so we would divide this output in half. So say we're right here. So this is our two firm sharing our output. Well, look at this. Our cost per unit would more than double. So this is a situation when cost of production goes up, that means prices are going to go up. And so we are better off letting this firm operate as a monopoly and having a lower cost per unit. So with these kinds of natural monopolies, with these huge economies of scale, the government tends to leave them alone and let them act as monopolies. And then they regulate them to ensure that the costs don't, the prices don't go too high. So, because we're better off with them having lower costs, that's going to make us, the consumer, also better off. So natural monopolies are one that we tend to leave alone and then just let the government regulate. Okay. All right. And then the last one that we're going to talk about is control over essential resources. So there have been very few worldwide monopolies. Most monopolies are local, but there have been a couple, one of which was Alcoa. Alcoa had a monopoly on aluminum because Alcoa owned all the supply of bauxite, which is a mineral that you need to make aluminum. So because they controlled the bauxite, they controlled the aluminum industry. So they had a monopoly there. And De Beers still has a monopoly on diamond jewelry because it owns the largest gem quality diamond mines in the world. Now, lots of places produce diamonds. If I have anybody here from Arkansas, Arkansas produces diamonds. In fact, there are places you can go as a tourist and dig around in the dirt and you will find diamonds, but they're not pretty. They're not gem quality. They're not anything you'd want to put in a ring. The diamonds in Arkansas tend to be used as parts of like industrial drill bits. They'll put these diamonds on the drill bits so that they're sharper and can cut better. And so they're not any kind of diamonds you'd want to wear. So De Beers has this jewelry market worldwide monopoly. Now, a few other things that we'll see is sometimes being the first mover gives you a bit of a monopoly position, or making a bunch of deals with a bunch of companies the way Microsoft has their operating system on every computer out there. For the longest time, that was kind of considered a monopoly, but those are the ones we'll focus on here. All right, so because there's only one firm, then all demand for the product goes to that one firm. So in monopoly, the market demand curve is also the monopolist firm demand curve. So this demand curve is both the market and the firm's demand curve. So no more horizontal line for our demand for the firm. We're going to have the whole market demand curve be our demand curve here. All right, it's going to be a normal downward sloping demand curve. So we're gonna look at a really simple example to start, and then we'll move on to the example we're really gonna use. So let's go back just for a minute to our PowerPoint. All right, so the first two columns here, the price and the quantity demanded, make up our demand curve. Okay, so I'm going to add some numbers to my little graph. Y'all can't see it, but I'll show you in just a minute, because we're going to need this. Back to it. All right, so we've got here price and quantity. Those will be given to you. That's the demand curve. And then you can calculate your total revenue, which is just price times quantity. So you can see 14 times 1 is 14, 12 times 2 is 24, 3 times 10 is 32. And then we've gone ahead and calculated our marginal revenue. This time, our marginal revenue is not equal to price. Not equal to price. So we're looking at the change in total revenue divided by the change in output. So as we go from 0 to 1 units of output, that's a 1 unit change, and revenue changes by 14. 14 divided by 1 is 14. Okay. Which is the same as the price. But now to go from the first to the second unit of output, revenue changes from 14 to 24. That's a $10 change divided by a 1 unit change in output, $10. 24 to 30, 6 divided by 1 is 6, and so on. Okay, so other than the very, very first unit of output, notice that the marginal revenue is always less than the price. Okay, the marginal revenue is less than the price. So I want to show y'all what's going on, why that's happening. Here we go. So Aaron, for your question, less than or equal to, it's only equal in the first unit. So we're gonna, I mean, you can say less than or equal to, but it's only gonna be equal in that one spot. So when we're talking about lots of output, it's really not gonna matter that much. All right, so I added some points from our demand curve because we're showing $2 changes in order to sell more output. All right, so that's enough to do what I want to do with this problem. All right, so revenue is, okay, 16, we're not selling anything. 14, we're selling 1. Rylan, perfect question. Yes, that is the problem. Every time we want to sell 1 more, we have to lower the price on everything. So what this demand curve is telling us, good instincts, Rylan. What this demand curve is telling us is that at $14, we can sell 1. If we want to sell a second unit, then we have to lower the price for both the first unit and the second unit to $12. Now we're going to sell both of these for $12. We do not get to sell the first one for 14 and the second one for 12. We lower the price for both to $12. Okay. If we want to sell a third one, we lower the price to $10 for 1, 2, and 3. Are y'all with me on this? Okay, so every time we want to sell 1 more, we lower the price on all of them. So that's what's going to bring me to this point. So 14 times 1 is the revenue for the first one, and I can represent that revenue by this column. Now, revenue for the second one is going to be, both of them are going to sell for $12. And so 12 times 2 this is going to be my revenue for the second one. Okay. And so what we can see is this box, this is revenue lost from decreasing the price, because now we don't get this, we don't get to sell the first one for $14, we're selling it for 12. So we've lost $2 there. But this is the revenue gained from selling one more. So we lost $2 when we lowered the price, but we gained $12 by selling one more. And so the change in revenue minus 2 plus 12 is $10. I'm going to go ahead and put the change in output. Okay. By selling one more, we earned an extra $10. But you can see as we keep going, if we go to this third unit, now we're losing this revenue. This box is getting bigger and this is getting smaller. And eventually, if we keep lowering the price, this lost revenue box is going to start getting bigger than the gained revenue box, which is what we see in the data. So we see that our marginal revenue is positive 14, 10, 6, 2. And then we go to -2, -6. This is where lowering the price has more of an effect than selling one more. So I think your homework might call that the price effect. And that is going to be stronger than the sales effect of selling one more. So does everybody understand what's going on with that? Okay, so in perfect competition, oh, our price equals our marginal revenue. In monopoly, our price is going to be greater than marginal revenue on all but output equal 1. It's getting a little, there we go. So let's go ahead and graph that. I can't get my camera's just a little crooked and it's bothering me. There we go. All right. So we're going to put our demand curve on. And this is not exactly correct, but when we're talking about a lot of output, it's not noticeable. I'm just going to start my marginal revenue in the same place I start my demand. And basically you should be drawing your marginal revenue so that it kind of cuts the area under the demand curve in half. Because as a matter of fact, where marginal revenue goes to 0, this should be your midpoint of your demand curve. Okay. When marginal revenue goes to 0, that should happen at the midpoint on your demand curve. Right. And what's going on with my elasticity up here? If this is the midpoint, what do I have up here? I think somebody was trying to answer there. Top half of the demand curve is where prices are high, consumers are going to be responsive or not responsive. Thank you. Responsive, elastic. There we go. Took y'all a second to find the chat button. So the top half of the demand curve is elastic. And we know the bottom half of the demand curve is inelastic. And that midpoint is our unit elastic place. And we drew this before. Hopefully y'all kind of remember this. Okay. And so our total revenue curve looks like this. And the elastic part of the demand curve, if we are lowering the prices, we are increasing revenue. If we lower prices on the inelastic, we're actually losing revenue. All right. The important thing to know about this, and where this is 0, this is maximized. And that is because if we take the slope of the total revenue curve at any point, we get marginal revenue, or the derivative of the total revenue curve is marginal revenue. But the important thing is to know, would any firm sell products where marginal revenue is negative? Remember what marginal revenue is. It is how much revenue we get from selling one more. So would you negative revenue yourself when you sold one more? No, because That's the equivalent of you had to pay somebody to take your product off your hands, right? So no firm is going to sell where marginal revenue is negative. Which means that monopolies are always operating on the elastic part of the demand curve. So they produce and sell output on the elastic part of their demand curve, where prices are higher. So this brings me to, what's the knock that we always hear? Why do we not like monopolies? Why does the government not like monopolies? What do we always hear about monopolies? Okay, underproduced goods at high prices. Yeah, we definitely hear that. A lot of times, correct. Yeah, we hear that too. And a lot of times we hear that they can charge as much as they want. I like your cost push inflation. Y'all have heard that about monopolies. Well, monopolies are unfair because they can charge as much as they want. But that's not exactly true. All right. Can this monopoly sell this product at $20? How much will they sell if they charge $20 for this product? They won't sell anything, right? So yes, they're going to charge more, and they're going to be on the more expensive part of their demand curve, but they are still constrained by demand. And it doesn't make any sense for monopoly to sell for as high as a price as they can, because that won't maximize profit. They still want to maximize profit, and selling, one unit outrageously expensively is not necessarily better than selling 20 units for a more reasonable price. So they're not going to charge as much as they can. They're going to charge what is profit maximizing. And so we have a situation here where a monopolist is different from perfect competition. All right. A monopolist can set the price. Okay. So they can pick their price. So we're going to call them a price maker. Perfect competition, we call them price takers. But a price maker means they can set their price. But if the monopolist sets the price, that will determine the quantity, because they're going to read the quantity off their demand curve. And if they pick the quantity they want to sell, then they're going to have to, then the price is given to them by their demand curve. They can't pick both the price and the quantity. They are constrained by their demand curve. So yes, they have some control over the price, but that's going to determine their quantity. So it's not real control. So once again, we're going to solve this as if we're trying to figure out the right quantity. and we will learn the price from demand along the way. So that's how we're going to approach this. We're going to be looking for the right quantity to maximize profit, and we'll get the price from the demand curve. So just to show you again, if this firm decides $10 is the right price, then they will sell 3 quantities picked for them. If they decide they want to sell 4 units of output, then they're going to have to charge $8 to do so. That's the only way this works. Okay, so let's get some more realistic numbers than this really simple example we've been doing. And so guess what? It's time for another handy dandy little chart. So we're going to be working with some numbers again. I think your notes might have a table in it, but I have found some errors in that table. So you definitely want to work with the numbers I'm about to give you. Okay, so we are going to be looking at a monopoly firm, and we're looking at demand and costs. Okay. All right, and I'm just giving you part of the demand curve. I'm not giving you the whole demand curve because it's huge. So we'll start with the demand curve price and our quantity demanded. All right, so it's a continuation. That's why I'm showing the dot, dot, dot. 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, and that continues on. And our demand would be 600, 700, 800, it's going up by 100 for every dollar the price goes down. All right, and so this is given. This is given. All right, then we can calculate our total revenue. So this is just our price times our quantity demanded there. All right, so 18 times 600, 17 times 700, 16 times 800, 15 times 900, and so on. If y'all ever don't know where something is coming from, please stop me and ask. All right, so we're still on the part of the revenue curve. We're at the top for sure, where the prices are higher because revenues are going up as we are lowering the prices, but we can see these increases in revenue are starting to get smaller and smaller. So we're definitely on the elastic part of the demand curve with what we've done here. And then I will give you the total cost. That's always given to you. Oops, that's a 3, 3, 5. Okay, so there we've got our costs. All right, so we can now calculate our profit, which in this case, we're just going to do it the simple way, total revenue minus total cost. So this is a calculate. So we're just going to take revenue minus our cost and get our profit. Okay, so how much output should this firm produce? There you go, good job. Yeah, 900, because the biggest profit that we're seeing in this column is 6,300, which corresponds to 900 units of output. And if this firm produces 900 units of output, they will charge a price of $15. Okay, very, very good. All right, so I'm not gonna bother with graphing the total cost and total revenue curves for you guys, because it's not something I expect you to know. Now, you're going to see problems that are monopoly, that are simple like this, where all you had to do was go through this calculation and get the highest profit, and you're done. But that's not going to help us graph the graph that we want to draw, which is the demand, the marginal revenue, the marginal cost, and the ATC. And so even though this one was really easy to solve without calculating the rest of that stuff, we want to go ahead and do that anyway. So let's go ahead and calculate our marginal revenue, our marginal cost, and our average total cost. We cannot calculate our average variable cost because we don't know what the fixed cost is here. And we don't have any way to determine it because we don't have output is 0. So we cannot figure out variable cost or average variable cost. So we have to stop with these 3. All right, I'm going to write down our formulas. Marginal revenue is the change in total revenue divided by the change in output. Okay, so this one, the denominator is important because this is not changing by 1. These are all changing by 100. So you have to remember to do that division at the bottom there. Marginal cost change in total cost divided by change in output. Again, don't forget that bottom. That seems to happen to y'all on tests. You forgot to include the denominator there. And then our ATC is just total cost divided by output. I'm going to give y'all a second. If y'all will calculate the first few of each one of these, then I'll fill in the rest. So I'm going to give y'all a minute to do the calculations yourself. Do it through about the 900. Calculate those three numbers through output of 900, and then we'll fill in the rest together. I'll give y'all a second. Grab a calculator or your phone or whatever you need to do. Just want to make sure y'all don't have any trouble doing those calculations yourself. I actually know the numbers for these first two. You don't, but I know the whole demand curve. So I'll give you those two because I know them. All right, I'll give y'all another minute to work on that. You can't. That's why I gave it to you, because you don't have the information for the previous amount, so that you can't find the marginal revenue. I gave y'all this one and this one because you can't calculate, because you need information from price of 19 and output of 500. So I'm just going to give you those two, but the rest you can calculate with the information you have. Are you going someplace else to work today? Are you going someplace else to work today?
Yeah.
Where are you going? Huh? Going like common grounds or something? Okay. Well, call me if you need anything. Okay, guys, what did y'all get for the marginal revenue for the 700th unit? 11? Other people get 11? I'm going to take your word for it. Okay. And what about marginal revenue for the 800th unit? Okay. Few of y'all are willing to venture 9. That is correct. And for this one, the 900th unit, 7. Okay. And I'll just finish that column up. 5, 3, 1. Okay, so there's our marginal revenues. So our prices are start at 18, our marginal revenues start at 13. So as we said before, our marginal revenues are less than our prices, okay? What about marginal cost of the 700th unit? Yes, output is the quantity demanded. All right, I didn't get $4.95 there. I got $4.30. Okay, other people are, and I got $4.95 for the next one. Is that what y'all got? That's okay, Devin. Okay, what'd y'all get for the 900th unit here? Yeah, I got 565 also. Okay, and I'll finish filling out that column. Then it goes to 635, 725, and $8.40. Hopefully everybody agrees with me on that. And then what about our average total cost of 600 units? Did anybody get that far? Okay. Thank you. 952, that's what I have. And what about the average total cost of 700 units? Yeah, I got 877 too, and y'all did too. Good job. And the next one, 829. All right, and then I'll just start filling in 8. 784, 778, and 783. Okay. Okay, everybody know where everything came from and can do this? Speak now before you have to do it on your own. Okay, so we're going to go through our incremental process we went through before. We are going to look at the 600 unit, and we are going to see that the 600 unit brings us in $13 of revenue and costs us $4 to make. Do we want to do that? Definitely want to do that. We bring in $13 of revenue, it only costs us $4. The 700th unit brings us in $11 and only costs us $4.30. We want to do that, so we're going to produce the 700th unit. The 800th unit brings us in $9 and costs us $4.95. Do we want to do that? Yes, we do. The 900th unit brings in $7. It costs us $5.65. Revenue is still greater than cost here. I want to do that. The 1000th unit brings us in $5 and costs us $6.35. We don't want to do that. our cost exceeds our revenue here. Okay. So we don't want to go to 1,000. So we need to back ourselves up back to 900. The real answer lies somewhere between 900 and 1,000 output, doesn't it? But we only allowed our prices to change by a full dollar. And so we don't know where between 900 and 1,000 marginal revenue actually becomes equal to marginal cost. So all we know is if we stop here, marginal revenue is still greater than marginal cost, which is good. And if we go to here, it's not anymore, which is bad. So even though we didn't get to where they're exactly equal, we know this is where we want to be. We want to stop at 900. So we're just going to kind of pretend like they're equal because we don't have enough information to find where they're actually equal. Are y'all with me on this? So if we don't find a place where they're exactly equal, stop as long as when marginal revenue is still greater than marginal cost. Okay. Stop there. Don't go here. All right. So let's graph what we've got so far. All right, so we've got our demand curve. And we've got our marginal revenue curve. Kind of comes down and cuts that area under the demand curve in half. We only get to see the part of the marginal cost curve that's rising, but I'm going to draw it the way I always do, as a Nike swoosh. Because it doesn't matter. I'm just kind of representing what's going on in this graph. All right, we want to find where MR equals MC. So I'm going to draw my big dot. We're pretending like those two were exactly equal at our output of 900. They weren't, but we're going to pretend. So our output of 900 is where we want to be. And then this is really, really important, guys. You don't want to just go over here. We've got to go up to the demand curve and then over to get the price. Price always comes from the demand curve. And for 900 units to sell, the price has to be $15. Okay, so make sure you don't just take your dots over this way, you go up to the demand curve and then over. And so now we want to show our profit or loss on this graph. And so the last thing we need to do is we need to put on our cost curve. And so I'm going to take these numbers and I'm going to compare them over here to the prices. And look, all of these numbers are less than the price. So this entire cost curve will lie under the demand curve. Okay, that's important to know. This whole thing is under the demand curve. So when I draw on my average total costs, they're going to look something like this. I'm going to go ahead and finish it out over here, but most of it is under here. Okay. Now remember, once we know 900, the output, that's all we care about. So we're going to go up from 900 and draw a big dot on that ATC. Bring that over. So our average cost per unit, 15,900 output. That average cost is $8. Okay. So here is our, always like to put my profit in green. So there's our monopoly profits. And remember to calculate our profits. P minus ATC times Q. So our profits are 15 minus 8 times 900. So 7 times 900 is 6,300, which is what we found here as well. So now we have a good looking representative graph of a monopoly firm making profits. So we know how to do it with the table and the numbers, and we know how to graph it. Once you have a good understanding of these graphs, this and the perfect competitions should come really naturally. What you guys need to do is you need to start putting a blank piece of paper in front of you and practicing drawing these graphs. You need to say yourself, I'm going to draw a picture of a perfectly competitive firm making losses that should keep producing. Or I'm going to draw myself a graph of a monopoly that's making profits like this one. Now that we have this one, monopolies are not guaranteed a profit just because they're a monopoly. You could be the best maker of carriage wheels and the only maker of carriage wheels out there. So anybody who needs carriage wheels, they have to come to you. The problem is we don't drive or ride around in carriages. So you may make a great product, but nobody wants or needs it. There's no demand for it. So you're not going to make money. Okay. So just because you're a monopoly does not guarantee money. People have to need and want your product. All right. So let's look at a monopolist making some losses. I'm not going to do the whole table again. We've done the table several times now. It's the same for perfect competition and monopoly. All my pens are running out of ink, and I don't like my new ones as much. All right. That's the third one I've thrown away this morning. All right, so we're looking at a monopoly firm. We're going to look at making losses. Let's put on that demand curve, that marginal revenue curve that lies below the demand curve. Let's put on our marginal cost curve. All right, and we're going to find where MR equals MC. That's going to be our desired level of output. We go up to the demand curve to read off the price that we must charge. And there's our ATC curve. So I'm going to go up to the ATC curve at my Q star, whatever that is. Bring that over. Here's my ATC above my price. So there's my losses box. So if I've got losses, I need one more thing. What do I need on this graph? Whenever we have losses, we need the ATC and the AVC. So I'm going to put my AVC down here. So what should this firm do? Should they shut down or keep producing based on my AVC as I've drawn it? Okay, I'm getting a mixture, so keep on voting here. Produce or shut down. And wait for a couple more of you to vote. Okay, we're in the short run, not the long run, Rylan. So we're talking about what should we do in the short run? Okay, most of y'all agree we should keep producing. So in this case, our price is here and our ABC is down here. When price is greater than AVC, we keep producing. All right, so this monopoly firm has a problem. They're the only ones in this business and they're not making positive profit. So there's a couple of things they could do. One of the things they could do is maybe go ahead and do some advertising to try to increase demand. If they can make this demand curve shift out, then they would be able to charge higher prices and maybe make some money. Okay, so that'd be the most important thing to do, is to try to increase demand. Other than that, they could try to cut costs. Okay, Aaron, for this case, I wanted to make sure we kept producing. So that's why the ABC is below the price. I'm going to show you one where ABC will be above the price. Usually we'll have a table that'll show us the numbers. We just don't have one. I'm doing this without the table just to show you what the graphs will look like. Okay. All right. All right. So that's what we can do, is try to cut costs or advertise to increase demand. All right. Now, everybody have this one down? So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the last graph for this part of Monopoly. And we'll take a quick break. Okay, Rylan, I'm going to come to that in just a minute. All right, got my demand curve, got my marginal revenue curve, got my marginal cost curve. Here's my AVC. There's my ATC. All right, so both my ATC and my AVC are above the demand curve. We don't want to produce anything here. This time we've got losses. So the next thing we do is we compare our price and our AVC. Price is less than AVC, temporarily shut down. What are we going to be losing? What are our losses going to be? We don't show it graphically, but we know what our losses are going to be. What are they? Yep, losses equal our fixed cost. Okay, so to go back to Ryland's question, all right, so if we're in this situation or this situation where we've got losses, the first thing we do is we try to fix the problem in the short run. So we try to increase demand, lower our costs. If we can't do either one of those, then we go out of business in the long run for sure. Because this is what monopoly should look like in the long run. Monopoly, because they're the only one with the high barriers to entry, should be able to continue to make a profit forever. Okay, so we try to fix the losses, but if we can't, then we get out, because I mean, I'm sorry, that's sad when you're the only one and you're making losses. So this is what our long run monopoly, the high barriers to entry will keep all the new entrants out and should allow us to make long run profits. Okay, guys, so let's take a quick break and we'll come back. We won't have that much more to do today. So we'll come back after the break and finish up a little bit more for today and be done a little early, which I know everybody will appreciate. So it's 10:45. Let's come back at 10:57, 12 more minutes. Okay, I'll see y'all in 12 minutes. Okay, everybody. It's time to get back. Like I said, we don't have a lot left to do today, so we will definitely get out early today. Yay, I think we all need a little break, and y'all do have a quiz that's due later today. All right, so we do not have a supply curve in monopoly. Basically, monopolists will supply whatever quantity is determined by that intersection of marginal revenue and marginal cost. And it's just going to end up being a bunch of points, because if demand shifts a tiny bit, then marginal revenue shifts a tiny bit, and the output that they'll provide will change a tiny bit. And so they'll provide a different amount. If something happens otherwise, they'll supply whatever amount happens to be where MR equals MC. And we don't get one nice straight line. We just get a bunch of possible points. And so there is no supply curve in monopoly. We just don't have a nice, pretty curve? Oh, Devin, tomorrow, your quiz is due. Or is it due? Yeah, it opened today, it's due tomorrow. So we don't have a nice, pretty supply curve. So you don't even have to worry about supply in here. And as I said before, in the long run, our monopolists should be making positive profits. And if they are not, if they try to increase demand or decrease their costs and that still doesn't work, then they need to go out of business. Okay. All right, so we want to know what's wrong with monopoly. We always hear we don't like monopolies. I've told you a little bit why we don't like monopolies. Y'all have come up with some things already on your own. You know that monopolies charge more, that they always operate on the elastic part of their demand curve, so the prices are going to be higher. But let's compare monopoly back to perfect competition. Okay, that's what we want to do. So we're going back to the document camera. And remember, we said last chapter that perfect competition was perfect. I'm going to get a new sheet of paper. Let's start fresh. All right. So we are going to compare long run to long run. And I'm going to do a lot of fudging here. So just bear with me. But let's draw a graph. I'm going to make it nice and big. All right. So there's our demand curve. This is our market demand curve. So this is when we did the flower market and we did the initial market supply and demand, that's that demand. This is not one for an individual firm, but we said perfect competition firms together maximize our consumer and our producer surplus. And when we looked at those, we were looking at the market demand. Okay. So we're going to put in our marginal revenue curve, and this is just for monopoly. Because we know our marginal revenue curve for perfect competition is constant. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on here. So this is our perfectly competitive price. This is our perfectly competitive marginal revenue. And because perfect competition produces where price is equal to ATC, this is also our marginal cost, both ATC. We're going to just put this as a constant marginal cost. This is one of those fudges I was talking about. And this just makes it turns our math into geometry instead of calculus. So I think y'all will appreciate making this a straight line so we can do geometry here. All right, so this is our long run solution to perfect competition where the price is equal to the ATC. And we're just going to make all of them equal here. All right, so this right here is our quantity for perfect competition, where marginal cost equals demand. Okay. All right, so let me use a different color for our monopoly outcomes. So what's going to happen at monopoly is here's where MR equals MC for monopoly. So this is our output for our monopoly firm. And then of course we have to go up to the demand curve, take a left, and this is our monopoly price. Okay. So I'm not going to make you recreate this graph. I just want you to be able to interpret this graph. All right. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and label some other points. I'm going to call this point A. This will be point B. This will be point C, and this will be point D. So all my points are labeled that I need to use. Okay, guys, y'all are gonna have to bear with me here. This huge triangle, the area under the demand curve and over the perfectly competitive price, this big old triangle right here, AC price PC, is our consumer surplus that we would get in perfect competition. So triangle AC price PC is our consumer surplus if we are perfect competition, if our industry is organized as perfect competition. Okay. If our industry instead is organized as a monopoly, then this triangle here, A, B, price, PM, this much smaller triangle is our consumer surplus for monopoly area under the demand curve, over the monopoly price. So triangle A, B, price, monopoly is our consumer surplus if monopoly. So if our industry is organized as a monopoly, this is what it would look like. Okay, so we lost some consumer surplus when when we compare perfect competition to monopoly. Our consumer surplus lost is this kind of odd shape right here. So I'm going to draw that. That kind of odd shape of PM, B, C, PPC equals consumer surplus lost with monopoly. So we want to know where this went. Who got this? Where did this consumer surplus go? Okay, that's what we're trying to answer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to label these two areas. Let's label this area X and this area Y. Okay. So what happened to X? That's this whole rectangle. And what happened to Y? All right, so our box, which is PMBDPPC, or area X. All right. All right, so this is the increase in prices. These are the extra amount that the monopolist is going to charge us. Okay. And this is all of the monopoly output. So the monopoly charges more on all of its output. So who gets this box X? Monopolist charges more on all output it sells. So this X used to be consumer surplus, and now it goes to the firm. It is, and it's now become producer surplus. So this consumer surplus is now producer surplus.
Could you possibly put the paper down a little bit?
Yes. Is that better? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So this area X goes to the firm as more producer surplus. Okay. Is that a loss to economic welfare? Producers are part of economic welfare. Remember, for economic welfare, we add producers and consumer surplus together. So this is not a loss to economic welfare. It's just a transfer. Okay. So X is fine. We're not unhappy with what happened with X here as economists. Maybe as consumers, we're not as happy, but we're not unhappy as economists. All right, so let's figure out what happened to area Y. Okay, so this is triangle BCD, which is equal to our area Y. What happened to it? Okay, we used to be able to buy all this extra output, but now we don't get to buy it, and nobody gets to sell it to us. So who gets Y? If we don't get to buy that output and they don't get to sell it to us, who gets that? Nobody. Okay. Okay, so Devin, what's this called? You're asking me about it? Yep. This is dead weight loss. Okay. Dead weight loss is consumer surplus lost to us and lost to economic welfare. Okay. And this is why we don't like monopoly, because monopolies result in dead weight loss. Dead weight loss is a loss of economic So when we lose economic welfare, we are all worse off in society. And that's why we don't like monopoly, is because monopolies result in dead weight loss. Our economic welfare is less under monopoly than it would have been in perfect competition. Okay, so I see y'all are still writing that down. Some economists spend their whole career estimating how big this dead weight loss is. Okay, so there are economists that this is their whole life, is figuring out how much dead weight loss is monopoly causing. All right, so I'm going to go back to my slides. All right. It's a good thing that most economists have two hands, because there's always on the one hand and on the other hand, and this is definitely one of those situations. So some economists say that welfare losses are not so high, that Y is not that big a triangle. And one of the reasons is what Ryland has suggested there, that governments will intervene and regulate prices to keep monopolies from charging too much. This is especially true of those monopolies with significant economies of scale, like electricity companies. So the government will tell them you can't charge more than X% over your costs to keep them from overcharging. A lot of times those monopolists will keep their own prices down for fear of government intervening or the markets getting upset. So the government might tell them you can only charge so much, or the monopolists themselves might regulate themselves. And so those are things that, as Ryland mentioned, will keep our dead weight loss smaller. We see government intervention in drug companies as well as electricity companies for life-saving drugs. So I don't know if y'all saw the story a few years ago about the EpiPens, and the prices of EpiPens were outrageous. You have to buy 2 at a time. They're only good for a year, and people have to keep several on hand if you have severe allergies. So if you're, a kid in school, you probably have one in your backpack, one that your school nurse has, one at home, and maybe even one at like really good friends' houses where you spend a lot of time. And they were charging like $300 per pen. So that was $600 to get 2. And then you threw them away after a year if you didn't use it. And all because it wasn't the medicine, it was because of the technology in the injector pen had changed. Ridiculous. The old technology was fine. And so the government had to step in there and say, no, you can't charge $300 per pen. This is ridiculous for medicine that's actually quite cheap. All right, but on the other hand, some economists think that that triangle is bigger. And the main reason there is what we call rent-seeking behavior. rent-seeking behavior. This is where monopolies spend money to protect their monopoly position. So you will see if you are a monopolist, they do a lot of lawsuits to keep competition out. So if you're doing something even remotely similar to what they do, they will sue the heck out of you. They have deep pockets. They'll drive you out of business and protect their monopoly position. So they're paying lawyers just to create lawsuits on their behalf. They're paying lobbyists to go and lobby Congress to keep their monopoly. And so they're using valuable resources for not valuable purposes from society's point of view. We would rather have those lawyers spending their time on something of value to society, or those lobbyists doing the same. The other thing is monopolists tend to be very inefficient. They are protected from competition, so they don't necessarily have to adopt the cheapest technology, so they're often slow to do that. So let me give you an example of a company. Cuisinart is a French company. They were the inventor of the food processor. And the first food processor came out in the 70s. I mean, quite a long time ago. And they were so revolutionary that Cuisinart in the 70s was charging like $300 and $400 for these food processors. That is a fortune in the 70s. I think my parents' first house in the 70s cost $3,000, and they were charging $300 for this food processor, but they had a patent on the food processor. So they had the right to produce that. They were the only ones that could produce it for 20 years. Well, let me tell you, as soon as that patent expired, bam, all this competition jumped into that market. They had just been waiting to compete with Cuisinart over the food processor. And as soon as this competition started, Cuisinart actually ended up going bankrupt. They had this fantastic monopoly for all those years, but they never did a thing to lower their costs. And so other companies were able to come in with food processors at like $45 a food processor 20 years after Cuisinart started this industry, when they're still charging $300, $400 for theirs. Cuisinart reorganized after bankruptcy. They are still a company, but that was quite a blow to their monopoly. So, I didn't want to go there. So that's a problem with monopolies is because they have no competition, they have very little incentive to lower costs if they're making money already. All right, guys, so we're gonna stop there and we will pick up with price discrimination in monopoly next class. It is only 11:25. We definitely got out early, which I know we're all happy about today. And actually, I went a little further than was listed in the syllabus, and we're still getting out early. So maybe we'll have a short day on Friday by the end of this week, if we keep up with the good pace. So I will hang on for a few minutes if anybody has any questions for me. Otherwise, work on your quiz, and I will see you in the morning, and I will remember to send that recording. I'll send both recordings out later today. I'll send one out immediately and then the other one later today.